Welcome to Marketing MASH, brought to you by themarketingscope.com.
Hi, I'm Eric Vidal with the Marketing Scope. Today we have Lisa Farrell, the CMO of 6Connects, a leading provider of virtual event and virtual environment platforms. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us. So when we talk about virtual events, a lot of times you're saying, well, let's rethink virtual events, or the market needs to rethink virtual events. I've heard you say that a few times.
Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
Well, virtual events they've been around a while now, right? Since 2009, that's when they really started to take off. Everybody cut their travel budgets.
Been around since probably before that, 2004 or 5.
But they really started to take off in 2009.
2008, 9, yeah.
Right. Everybody said, no travel, I must do virtual, that's it. Okay, great. Since that time, people have been doing pretty much the same thing. Cookie cutter virtual events, model after the virtual trade show.
Model at the virtual trade show. You come into this virtual environment. You have conference hall over there for breakouts and keynotes and panels. You have maybe a expo hall where you can have booths and what have you.
Exactly.
A library.
Exactly. Maybe a library, but generally you look at having a live day with a bunch of people showing up on one day for an agenda. You have those specific rooms, and that's it.
But
and by the way, it's live, and then it's on demand for 3 months. That's like everyone does the same thing. We're going to do an event, and then I want it live on demand for 3 months.
Just so you know, at Marketing Scope, we do ours a little longer.
Well, that's good. But most people do the same old.
So Lisa, for those cookie cutter environments, you know, Brian Fonzo, who works with us, I remember the first time he was in one of these 3 or 4 months ago, and he's all, wow, like this is amazing. But it could be more than that. Can you give us some examples of some brands or some companies that are making it more than just a cookie cutter trade show conference?
Well, I think I want to clarify something. So when I talk about the cookie cutter virtual trade show, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, because we see the same thing all the time. We have a marketing company who puts on a monthly virtual event. They do pretty much your cookie cutter virtual event. Every month without fail, people in the networking lounge saying, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, like you just referenced. So what's amazing to me, having been in the space quite a while, is that there are still so many people who've never been to a virtual event. They've never tried it. So many companies have never tried to put one on. So I think that for the most part, what's been done has been very cookie cutter. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do believe that marketers especially should rethink how they do the traditional virtual event, and that they should actually start thinking outside the traditional virtual event.
I agree. Give us some tips. So you mentioned the 3 months, the 90 days. What do you recommend? How long should that environment be?
I don't think you need to think about it as it's on demand for 90 days. I wrote a blog quite a while back. If you have 2 people in an environment, you have live activity. We have to get away from this notion of a live day and then on demand. Yeah. And I believe that's primarily been driven by the way virtual events and environments have been sold, not by virtue of how they should be used, right? So what we're trying to do, and hopefully the market will come along with us, is to really rethink how to use these environments. You've bought a license to a virtual platform. Yeah. You can host numerous virtual events, and they don't all need to look the same. And we're seeing a couple of different trends. So on the one hand, if I'm going to do the traditional virtual environment, host a live day, have some on demand, what I'm more likely to do is to come back or invite my audience to come back again and again.
So maybe like have a calendar for X amount of time, 6 months, and 2 weeks later have an event.
Exactly.
Maybe have some kind of product showcase a week or 2 later, and have these different things to drive them to the environment.
Absolutely. I see so many people who do a virtual event the very first time. They invest hours and hours, and they create this big long agenda, and everybody is exhausted afterwards. It might be incredibly successful. They might get the numbers they want, all of that. They check the boxes. But they're so exhausted at the effort that they don't want to do it again. I believe that by thinking about doing it in kind of almost smaller chunks, as you said, maybe it's regularly scheduled. Maybe it's hosting an agenda with 3 live sessions and then inviting people to come back to just chat with product experts. There are so many things you can do inside virtual environments today that, again, I don't think that marketers take advantage of.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I'll be honest, I'm guilty of that. And most people are. They put all this time and energy in an in-person event or a virtual event. Mm-hmm. And the day or the hour it's over, like I just want to, I'm done. I just want to think of something else.
Exactly.
But our marketing gal, she's so funny because that's when she gets the most excited is the 24 to 48 hours after. She's trying to keep it alive and keep people coming. And it's great because we get a lot of people into our environment the 2, 3, 4 days after. Do we 4 weeks after, 6 weeks? Probably not as.
You've got to give them a reason to come back.
Exactly. So maybe offline I'll get some tips from you. But
absolutely. So the other big trend that we're seeing with our clients is actually thinking a bit smaller about their virtual events and environments. So instead of, again, doing cookie cutter, I must have an exhibit hall and an auditorium and a networking lounge. That's pretty standard with all these booths. Well, why not just host a one-room event? Why not really, truly think about it differently? We recently had Intel conduct what they called a chat forum. It's a one-room virtual environment. There's not even a live streaming webcast in it. It's come on in, participate, chat, let's have a conversation. That's different. We have customers hosting a virtual classroom, whether that's for partner education, a lot of internal things we do as well, but it's one room, it's a virtual classroom. I don't need all these rooms and spaces. Or we just did an event with HireVue, week before last, I think it was. They did a great event. They had sponsors participating, but they didn't have an exhibit hall. You don't have to have an exhibit hall and booths and follow that model. And that's, you know, for me, it's precisely it. And I'll say our environments do model themselves from a look and feel after a physical environment. Yeah. The images look like I'm in a physical environment.
But you can make it anything you want.
You can make it anything you want. It could be this room,
yeah,
right? There's no reason why I wouldn't want to invite people to come into my office on a regular basis. Yeah. Why does it have to be what it's always been before? And that's my big.
Here's one. So I know a little bit about this space. Ford, they had a typical trade show, virtual trade show. But when you, as the attendee, logged in, you were in the front seat of a car looking at the dashboard.
Oh, yeah.
And it was flying through space.
Sure.
And it was showing off this new car. And you had to click on there was some buttons on the dashboard. You can go to certain places in the environment, but you started in a car in space. And it's just interesting. I've seen some other things too. I saw one company, they had an event on Halloween, and so they made it real spooky, and it wasn't an environment. It was just different. So there's a couple. I'm sure you've seen more than that. What are some of the things you've seen?
I think that can work. I don't necessarily think we should go gimmicky.
Yeah.
Right? I think trying to put a Halloween theme on something necessarily, or making it like I'm driving a car, that's trying to make it a different type of experience. It's a gimmick from my perspective. I guess what I mean is, I think the rooms and spaces concept works because that's how people intuitively know where to go to get information. Sure. And we think about them as destinations. People are coming together to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is not even everybody listening might even know what we mean when we say virtual event. Right? And because virtual events, they could be a webinar. Come to my virtual event. Come to my online event. It's a webinar. It's a webcast. It's a live day. It's all these things today. It's a Google Hangout, right?
Well, now Blab, because no one does Google Hangouts anymore.
Oh, that's true. I'm way behind the times. That came out what, yesterday? Like, I got to get up to speed.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, there was a pharmaceutical company I know that they had different spaces, as you say, or destinations, and they had maybe 6 of them. And each was organized around a topic. And in there, they had all the content and video around that topic, but they also had subject matter experts. Mm-hmm. So it was very collaborative, right? There was always something going on in these rooms. And they had like office hours, like we did in college.
Right.
And so you could come in, you knew that from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, these experts would be in there. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about too, right? Is that a better?
That's exactly it. So you can take I was chatting with our CEO yesterday about this, about coming and having this conversation, and he likes to say to people, right, you own the building. So think about all the things you might do in the building. So if I owned Moscone, that's going to be a little big.
Moscone Center in New York.
Moscone Center in San Francisco.
San Francisco, excuse me. I just got back from New York.
But if I owned a convention center, you can bet I wouldn't just use it once and send everybody home. Or if I'm an enterprise, I have a big, awesome office campus. I invite everybody to my campus. I host a big event for a product launch, right? Everybody come in, meet the experts. Let's have some presentations. Let's shake hands, salespeople, etc. If it's at my campus, I'm not going to send everybody home and then say, by the way, I invite you to come back tomorrow. The building's going to be empty. There will be nobody here, but feel free to browse around, read some collateral. I mean, that's kind of what we do in a way.
That's a great analogy. I mean, it's you have this platform, use it, make it community-esque. I mean, that's a great example.
You know what? And I love what you just said about make it community-esque, because that's another thing. I talked about these smaller environments, right? So we have customers who are saying, well, I want to do webinars, but I want to do webinars differently, because a webinar is another great example. So I host a webinar, I click the link, everybody attends it. We've all been to thousands of webinars. When it's over, the speaker says, okay, we're done now, shuts down, it's gone. Well, what happens if there were 3 people or even 1 person listening to your webinar who had more questions? You hope that they go to your website and reach out to you. You hope they respond to that follow-up email, or you hope that biz dev rep who calls them 10 minutes later says the right thing and doesn't annoy the hell out of them, right? Well, what if you had that webinar inside of an environment that allowed for a little breathing room? So I have my webinar, I'm in the environment, and there's a couple of reps that are going to hang out, or the product experts say, by the way,
we'll still be here.
We're going to be here, and we're going to keep answering your questions until you don't have any more questions. So we have customers creating literally a webinar theater. Again, it's one room. People can come back again and again. They can view the live today webinar. I can still talk to experts afterwards. And then I can go browse the on-demand webinars. So it's creating, again, a destination for your content, putting a wrapper around it that invites people to connect with you, connect with their peers, connect with your content, and really kind of take them along that journey. Versus saying, do this, go away, maybe come back and we might be here, I might not, and then we'll see you in 3 months or 6 months when we do another virtual trade show.
No, I like what you're saying. I mean, it's a journey. This is where, as marketers, we're evolving to, hopefully.
Yes.
One of the things, so we did a report, I think it was in April, it came out in May. It was called the Marketing Scope Lead Generation Report. And,
right.
And I know that webinars rank very highly as a tool that marketers find that they find very successful in regards to lead gen and thought leadership. But virtual events actually was pretty high. I think it was 8 or 9. And and there's other reports where I've seen it maybe 10 or 11, which is good, right? They've come a long way. What can get them to that next level where they can boost up from being 10th on the list to 6? And there's so many different marketing programs and platforms and vehicles to use, but what can get them to that next level? Because everything you said I love, but not everyone's doing that. What can get it?
If I can get marketers to think just a little bit differently, right? I think we're going to start to move the needle. So there's a lot of people who've tried them. Maybe they didn't have success. Maybe they didn't like them. Again, they got tired. Or they aren't seeing activity in booths. Okay, great. Stop using booths, right? So if you've done one, talk to your marketer, talk to your audience. If you've done a virtual event, I want you to rethink it. Go take another look. Go look at where it can fit in their journey, in their customer journey, their buyer journey, right? So that's one, go back. For all the people who've never done it before, look at it with fresh eyes. What's your challenge that you have to solve, and how can a virtual environment help you solve it? Don't just say, okay, it's January and I'm looking at my tactics for the year. I'm going to do a virtual event in August.
By the way, everything you're saying, I know, but I know that when we have these virtual event meetings and I'm in there, I'm not always pushing the envelope. So I'm going to push the envelope more here in our organization.
I think you absolutely should.
So what about the pricing? What I hear from people is they love, hey, I love your platform. What can we do and I tell them the pricing. It's still a little cumbersome. What can we do as a market, or what can we do as an industry, or what are you guys doing as an industry to help people make it easier for companies to come into it? Because I know for large companies it's not a big deal, but for smaller companies it's a little tough because it's not like a $1,000 webinar or something like that, right?
Is anybody selling a $1,000 webinar? I think yours are more expensive than that.
Something, you know.
Are you having a sale? Should we let everybody know you're having a sale on webinars right now?
I don't think so. Well,
Okay.
maybe we are. Maybe we are. I don't know. I guess I talk to sales and marketing.
So it's a great point. And I saw that in the research report that, again, I was really happy to see where virtual events ranked. And I saw the note that cost is frankly a prohibitor. People, they'll be a sponsor in somebody else's event. They don't want to host their own. I think there's two reasons why they don't want to host their own. One, they think it's hard. We are on a mission to make it easy. So again, think small, think differently. We're going to give you best practices, all of that. That's one side. From a cost perspective, I mean, I'm a big believer in this as a market. But from the Six Connects perspective, we would agree that they have been expensive and that they maybe haven't been positioned the right way, really as a software platform that demands more usage. I mean, if you get a license to any software, it's a license, you want to use it a lot. There shouldn't be really any gates or very few gates on how you can use the software that you just bought a 12-month license to.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's great. So I'm going to do a virtual event for the first time. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that I should know of right away?
I have 3 recommendations if you're going to do a virtual event for the very, very, very first time. First and foremost is think small. Do not think about doing an incredibly long agenda and multiple tracks and 50 different speakers and maybe you don't even use an exhibit hall. Think small. A couple of sessions, small. The next thing is round up your posse of people that are going to help you. So know your team is my second one. So think small, know your team, because even if you're doing a small event, you can't do it by yourself. It's going to be people who help produce your content, people who have live day support, and also people who do audience generation. Those are just those 3 things. I know you're going to need help with those. Great. And then the third thing, you have to know the why. So before you get started, know the why you're doing this virtual event. And not your why, because yours might be because your CEO told you to do one. You've got to really understand what's the goal of this program before you ever you should know that before you ever talk to a vendor. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, good points.
Those 3 things.
Real fast, for anyone who wants more information, we have a virtual event best practice guide on the Marketing Scope. Lisa, I know you have other educational materials, so can they get that at your website?
Absolutely, and I'm actually really excited. We just started a program officially calling it Tip Sheet Tuesdays, so check back on Tuesday. But again, we're really on a mission to help people know, whether they're using our platform or someone else's, how can you be successful using virtual events and your virtual environment as a whole. So please, we'd love it. We'd love you to share. It's not gated, by the way. You can come to my website and get all kinds of great information.
And what's the URL again?
Our URL? www.6connects, CONNEX.
EX, perfect. Lisa Farrell with 6 Connects. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks so much.
That's it for this episode of Marketing MASH. You can share your thoughts by following us on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast to keep up with the show. And of course, you can always find us by visiting themarketingscope.com.